Welcome, everyone. My name is Cynthia Allen. I am a former member of the CNG board and working with the program planning committee here in the DC area. We're excited everyone is able to join us. I know we have some people who are logging on, that participant numbers going up, but I do want to get us started. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get into our content. You should be allowed, everyone was muted on entry, you should be allowed to mute and unmute yourself. Please go ahead and just keep yourself muted if you're not speaking, just so we can keep any background noise down. Our speaker will be using video. You may choose to use video or not. If you need a break from video, please feel free to do so. If you'd like to ask a question at the end and you'd like your video on, that's perfectly fine as well. We're flexible here at CNG. I do ask that you submit questions or comments through the chat feature. We will save plenty of time at the end of the session for questions with our speaker, Amy, and welcome you to share your comments and thoughts on the content as well. We'll also use a few minutes at the end of the session for any announcements. So if you have any announcements, maybe that's a upcoming virtual event or a job opening, anything you'd like to share with us, go ahead and put that into the chat feature, and I'll make sure that we get time for your announcements. We will record the session, as I mentioned, so we'll have it available for anyone who was not able to join us today. Of course, I want to thank our sponsors for this year. These are some names that you've probably gotten used to seeing. They're ongoing sponsors of CNG, and we certainly thank them for their support in making these sessions possible and free to you within the credentialing space. So we'll thank BTL Surpass, Cobalt, Prometric, Pearson VUE, Examity, and PSI for their continued support of CLP. I also want to thank our supporting sponsors. We are thankful to have these organizations that participate in CNG and also support us financially to help make these meetings possible. It's American Association of Medical Assistants, DANBI, Dental Assisting National Board, ASIS International, BCSP, CMAA, and HUMRO. We do have three featured sponsors for today, Cobalt, Examity, and PSI. And we have a representative from each of those organizations that's just going to introduce themselves and take a few moments to introduce their organization. So let's start with Cobalt. We'll do this alphabetically. Matt Seeger, I think I did see you on the line. If you can unmute yourself, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks so much for pulling this event together. I've joined a couple of the prior webinars as well, so always like getting together with the group and hearing the engaging, interesting content that you all are sharing on a monthly basis, and appreciate the flexibility of moving into the virtual world. I know it's been hard for a lot of folks, but you guys seem to have done it pretty seamlessly, so this has been awesome. So I've just got a short 45-slide PowerPoint to run through. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously not going to do that today, but just wanted to quickly share a bit about who Cobalt is in the hopes that we can help any of the folks on the line that are thinking about making an upgrade to their certification management solution or their processes. So, at Cobalt, we've built certification management solutions and association management solutions on top of Microsoft Dynamics 365. So that's allowed us to meet the oftentimes really specific needs of certification boards, as well as those of membership only organizations. And we've been supporting these types of groups for over 20 years now and work with organizations of all types and sizes. So that includes folks like SHRM, the Pharmacy Technician Certification Board, the Institute of Internal Auditors, the American Welding Society are just a few of our partners. And obviously each of those organizations have really specific needs. But with all of our partners, our main focus is to, of course, meet those needs, but then A, let's make the job of your staff a whole lot easier. B, let's improve that applicant or member experience. And then we want to give you a very flexible, configurable solution that can meet the future needs that we may not even know about just yet. So just kind of, I'll share one quick example or maybe two, but for AWS, we actually helped them rethink their entire certification pathway and automated a ton of those steps that previously took their staff hours to complete. And then for SHRM, it's actually a pretty interesting story. We actually built their solution from the ground up. And now not only have they grown that, but the flexibility of the platform has enabled them to move into offering micro certifications and do some digital badging as well. And then the last thing I'll note is one of the biggest benefits of the platform that we've provided to our partners is that we can seamlessly integrate with testing vendors that are out there. So right now, our main integrations are with Pearson VUE and Prometric. I know some of the other folks speaking this morning are from other organizations, but we are swiftly moving to build out those integrations there as well, which can continue to be a huge win for staff and applicants alike. So again, hopefully that wasn't too long this morning, but if anyone is interested in learning more or curious if an upgrade or more about the requirements or the specific elements of the solution, please feel free to shoot me a note, drop me a line. Happy to have that conversation and pick up in a one-to-one fashion to learn more about your priorities as well. So I'll put my details in the chat, but again, thanks so much for the opportunity to connect this morning.
Great, thank you, Matt. Our next sponsor, featured sponsor for today, is Examity, and we have two members, Sarah and Biana. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourselves. I do have your slides in here. If you want to give me a quick cue to advance, I'd be happy to do that for you.
Great, thank you. Thank you to CNG for pulling this great webinar together on such an important topic. Before we begin, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself as well as my teammate, Sarah. My name is Biana Crowder. I'm the Director of Business Development at Examity. Here with me, I have Sarah Pauling, Vice President of Marketing at Examity. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Examity, we're an online proctoring solution. We've been in the marketplace since 2013. We manage millions of exams per year and partner with a wide variety of clients across the certification, licensure, and education industries. We are proud to now be a sponsor of CNG. Real quick, I'd like to take a moment just to highlight some of our most recent accomplishments. And on the next slide, you'll see earlier this month, we announced that Rachel Schoneg has joined the Examity team as our new Chief Science Officer. Rachel is not just an industry expert, but an exam security expert. And we are really excited to have her join our leadership team. We are also pleased to have added Sue Kaminsky as our Vice President of Account Management. We are thrilled to have Sue join our team and leverage her extensive experience managing and growing teams, fostering client relationships, and executing business strategies. Finally, Examity received the new Ims Global Certification for online proctoring, and we're really excited about that. At Examity, we're really building our talent to help lead our vision for test integrity, ensure best practices in online proctoring, and be great support for our teams and clients. So lots of new and exciting advancements happening at Examity. You can, of course, find out more about us by visiting our website, or you can shoot me an email at info@examity.com. And now I will pass it over to Sarah.
Great, thank you, Biana. And Cynthia, you can move on to the next slide. Oh, you did already. So considering today's discussion around social media, I wanted to take a few minutes to speak on a critical component of your program's reputation, specifically best practices and considerations for the candidate test experience. As you consider test delivery in 2021, we strongly recommend you evaluate the service profile and not just your security profile. In fact, in line with today's topic, many of the stories you've seen in social media for the last 12 months, while often outliers of a typical candidate experience, speak to how critical the candidate experience is for your brand. This chart represents the key elements to the test taker experience, from strong and consistent communication, candidate preparation, robust 24/7, 365 support, a seamless and flexible candidate journey, and finally, clear and direct transparency in your privacy and security practices. We'd love to walk you through these best practices as we discuss our commitment to NCCA, ANSI, and ATP NCTA standards for running a live online proctoring program. You know, this is a strange new world we're living in, and we're all playing catch up. But by meeting these best practices for the candidate experience, you can really help to protect and strengthen your program's reputation in 2021 and beyond. And that's it from me. So back to you, Cynthia.
Great. Thank you both, and thank you, Examity, for your support. Our final featured sponsor for today is PSI, and we have Scott Hazlitt on the line, I believe.
Yeah, good morning.
Great.
Yeah, so Cynthia, awesome, thank you. So my name's Scott Hazlitt. I'm the Vice President of Business Development at PSI, and it's a pleasure to speak with you all today. So in keeping with today's theme on social media, all the information I'm going to share is available online and via social media vehicles. Last year, in the mid stages of COVID and lockdowns, we aggregated 6 months worth of data from our multimodal clients and their candidates and uncovered some interesting trends. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And of course, you can find the complete reports on the PSI website. So for our purposes today, what is multimodal? Multimodal testing is testing in test centers and live online proctoring. Prior to COVID, IT organizations, large global programs, and certification organizations with other direct competitors used multimodal testing. After COVID appeared and the test center closures, PSI and other testing vendors have migrated organizations to multimodal testing across all certification sectors, including IT, healthcare, finance, construction, you name it, everyone's been transitioning. So in fact, PSI migrated over 40 organizations to multimodal testing last year. And obviously we continue to do so today. So when candidates are given the option between online proctoring and test centers, which option do they choose? So if you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, so pre-COVID, 10 to 15% of candidates were selecting online proctoring. Since COVID showed up, that number's jumped to over 70%, with IT at 80%, healthcare at 67%, and architecture and construction at 49%, which is somewhat lower than the other two sectors, but it's still an increase from the pre-COVID days. And then one note is we do expect that 71% to drop by about 5 to 10 percentage points when COVID is in our rearview mirror, but we do expect online proctoring to stay in the majority. So when candidates are selecting online proctoring, where do they take their exam? And this probably isn't surprising to y'all, but 93% of the candidates are testing from home, 5% are at their office, and then 2% are testing from other locations like a private room in a public library. And then with candidates being responsible for their testing environment, the computer, broadband, and other items, how is candidate satisfaction compared to test centers? And so as you can see, the candidate satisfaction remains high across both modalities, with 99% rating their test center experience good or excellent, and 95% rating their online proctoring experience good or excellent as well. And some of the driving factors behind that satisfaction were also surveyed. Was the proctor or the test center staff friendly and helpful? Were the instructions easy and the software easy? All of these factors had high ratings as well. In addition, the data shows that candidates are very interested in having multiple testing options to choose from. And then the final piece that I'm going to cover today is our psychometrics team, led by Dr. John Weiner, conducted a number of tests, including t-tests, chi-squared tests, and others to validate the data. And so across the board, mean scores, pass rates, and exam reliabilities were very comparable. In addition, we saw no increase in malpractice or cheating between the two modalities. And then finally, as we saw on the previous slide, the candidate experience was a positive one. So that's just a quick, short overview of the data. If you'd like to do a deeper dive, there's my contact information at the bottom. We also have it posted on the PSI website. So thank you very much. And Cynthia, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that data, and thank you again to all of our sponsors for your support this year and last year. So we are going to get started on our content. This is a topic that I know I hear all the time. I hear it in the halls or when I was attending conferences, in the halls at ATP, ICE, and other meetings, just making sure that we're leveraging our social media content and getting the most out of it. So I'm happy today to have Amy Jauman on the line. If you've heard Amy speak before, you know that she's a wonderful speaker, very knowledgeable on this subject. Works with the Chief Learning Officer at the National Institute for Social Media. She is the author of several books on this subject, and we're really lucky that she was available today to go through this content with us and really give us some tips that we can take away today and use in our own organization. So Amy, I'm going to stop my share and ask you to go ahead and take over.
And I will happily do that. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Just doing a quick check. I know Cynthia is going to do an awesome job, but can I get a confirmation that you all can see my PowerPoint and the screen looks good and I sound okay just before I get rolling? Because I'm telling you, once I get started, I'm pretty hard to stop. So everything look okay? Oh, look at the thumbs up. Okay, this is also just a nice way to fish for compliments that looks legitimate and professional. So. All right, thank you all for taking the time to talk about your digital presence today. It's important, so I am so glad that as more and more time passes, I see more and more decision makers, people in various parts of the organization showing up for sessions like this. And I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about my background, just so you know where some of my examples are going to be coming from today. So I am Amy, and I am a certified social media strategist, and I also have a GPHR certification. So it's the Global Professional Human Resource Certification through HRCI. So if any of my HRCI friends are here today, a little shout out for you. The reason I mentioned that is because I joined the certification realm 5 or 6 years ago with NISM, and that particular certification, so a social media strategy certification, is unique in that at the time it was, or my experience rather, was unique from a marketing standpoint, because at the time it was something no one had heard of, and part of our messaging was helping people understand the need, like why they should care, why they should listen to what it is that we're telling them. My recent experience, so I actually just got my GPHR certification last year, in the year that must not be named. So the reason I mentioned that is because I currently work for St. Mary's University of Minnesota. I work in the HR realm. And that has not only provided me with an interesting take on how people perceive certificates and certifications, continuing education, and what all is coming at people, but also because I was recently a test taker. So I have really enjoyed being able to reflect back on that and my experience and what moved me and what engaged me. So I hope that I can share some of that with you today, and that you'll find it beneficial. So Cynthia shared a little bit about my background. Just one more thing, you'll notice at the bottom of these slides, which are available to you, is my name and my contact information and where you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Amy Jauman out there, so as long as you spell my name close to right, you'll be able to find me. I mean, not to brag, but I'm pretty popular on LinkedIn. So I get lots of invitations to connect. So please indicate that we connected through CNG, and I'll accept your invitation. LinkedIn, like we'll talk about today with a lot of other platforms, runs off of an algorithm. So the more active you are, the more they put you in front of other people, the more they increase your connections. So I'm on there all the time. So I get lots of stranger requests. All right, so today we're going to talk about really practical stuff. Strategy is incredibly important. I can help you with strategy as well. I can get you some resources on strategy. It's just not on our agenda today. What I want you to walk away with today is ideas for all that you have to share with your community and how you can become people in the digital community that your community, your audience want to know, want to talk to, want to follow, want to engage with. So we're really going to focus on content today. We're going to focus on partnerships, how they can help you, and the few different kind of aspects, ways you might leverage that. And then we're going to do a brief overview of a handful of social media platforms. I cannot teach 5 platforms in one session, and you don't want that experience. But I'm going to talk a little bit about each of the platforms so that after you've had a morning of brainstorming, right, and kind of reflecting on everything that you have at your fingertips, you can also make the decision about where to track down your audience and where you want to continue your learning from a platform education standpoint. And then I just can't not talk about project and time management. It is just, I gotta say it. So I'll wrap up with just a couple of tips about how to get some of that stuff done and connecting with key stakeholders. I try sometimes, but it's too important and I have too much to say on the topic. So we're going to start by talking about how to turn one piece of content that you might have into 10 social media posts. So before anybody takes it too literally, I'm not going to walk through every individual piece and how to convert it to 10 different things. It's more just something for you to shoot for and maybe even have a little fun with. But before we start to look at that, before we kind of take a peek at what exactly it is that you might be modifying and sharing in different ways, I would love for you to take a moment to just think about what content you have that is easily accessible. And please, if you don't mind, share ideas that you have in the chat, because what typically happens is someone will say like, well, we have a regular blog that, comes out twice a week, or they'll say, oh, once a month, people in our community produce a white paper, or we've got a great marketing professional that does behind the scenes Facebook Live videos all the time. She puts great content out about every 3 days. When people share things like that, what tends to happen is other people reading things like that it'll kind of dawn on them. Oh yeah, I have that as well. Podcast, another great example. And so this is an example of us as a community coming together, sharing what we're using and helping each other create that really robust list. The richer the list is that you're starting with, the easier the rest of these steps are going to be. Because here's what happens next. You'll take, and then the next couple of slides, I'm going to have content ideas also kind of mapped out for you. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your content item that you have, just any one of them, and you're going to think about the different ways that that piece of content can be leveraged on different platforms or in different mediums. Just one more example. So let's say, like the National Institute for Social Media, you have regular blog posts. Enjoy the fact that you have this constant in your work environment. This is something you are going to leverage. So this is something that someone else is already managing. Maybe it's something that you already have up and rolling. This is a great place to start because you're going from good to great. You'll also come up with ideas that you'll be integrating and starting things from scratch. That's great too. But for now, we're going to start with the low-hanging fruit, stuff that's already there that we can just make more out of. So if you have that blog post, what do you do with it? You probably publish it on your website. I hope you publish it on your website because it's great for your website health and for driving activity to your website and all of that good stuff. So here you got that blog post, but then maybe you kind of next level it and you promote it via your Facebook page, or maybe you send it out in your membership newsletter. Those are all great options of things you should be doing. But is there a way for you to take that blog post content and put it out in a different format and just make it go a little bit further? So for example, if we at NISM had written a blog post about how you can convert one piece of content into 10, maybe a line from that blog post is a great quote that can just be a tweet all on its own. Like there might be, I mean, let's face it, I'm brilliant, right? I'm spewing things out all the time that are valuable. There's probably one sentence that can stand by itself. So if I wrote this beautiful little blog, can I go through, copy, paste, and actually have some content for Twitter? Very possible. You might also, once you start thinking about that, think like, I can also, with my little quote, maybe link it to the blog, and I can drive some traffic back to my website. But those ideas don't really emerge unless you stop and kind of break the cycle of I write a blog post, I post it to the site, I post it to the 2 social media sites that we're already active on as read our latest blog, right? Like sometimes when we have this great existing content, it kind of works against us because we've developed this survival routine to keep content going. So, but let's keep going with it. So let's stay with this blog post idea. Take a step back and ask yourself, well, could the content from this blog post be made into an infographic? So if you aren't familiar with what an infographic is, that's those kind of drawings or cartoons or charts that you see that are a graphic that depict something. So like if I was talking about turning one piece of content into 10, it would be something like branded to NISM with a nice kind of gray background, and in blue, it would say turn a blog post into, and then I would have a list of 10 different things that blog post could become, but it would be a graphic. Now, the hard part for a lot of social media content is the idea, is the research, is giving people something to talk about. The easier part is when you realize, this content or a portion of this content can come to life in a different medium. It can exist in a different way. So that might even be something that you set up kind of more routinely within your office team. And I should have said this at the beginning. I'll speak to everybody about just kind of researching what's available in their own environment, because it's a big group, we all have different resources available. So I might say something like, you might ask a coworker and you might say, I am a social media team of 1 and no one else in my organization even really cares about this yet. And that's okay, right? Like everybody is starting out at a different, well, I mean, you probably don't think it's okay, but everybody's starting out at a different point. So just join me wherever you are, and know that at the end, one of the things we are going to talk about is kind of integrating those key stakeholders and hopefully growing teams and supports as we can. So for example, you might say, I'm going to set up a routine now so that every one of my blog posts is reviewed for the potential that it will be an infographic, because I know that infographics get picked up and shared more often. We're a very visual community now, right? If you have not read it, I highly recommend The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains by Nicholas Carr. It's a fantastic book that kind of shines a light on how little we are reading and how unable we are to have a high level of comprehension when we read large amounts of text. Less is always more. So that's why infographics come in such a lovely way and can be such a lovely partner to a blog post. It can sometimes just turn right into it. And if you can set up that routine, look at that. You've just doubled your blog post purpose. You may also find that when you learn how to talk to your key stakeholders, when you talk about ROI, when you start to kind of explore this, that you go and you look on sites like Upwork or like freelancer sites, you might start sourcing out $100 to $200 at a time, where you just have people create these pieces. So maybe you have a blog post or 5, and you find a freelancer who specializes in making infographics, and you just have a one-time kind of freelancer deal where they help you out. You may not be able to get a budget approved to get more social media marketing support, but you might be able to get hiring budget approved, but you may be able to get a small project budget approved. So just something to think about. Let's keep going. So I'm still working with just my one blog post. Can this blog post be a video? How could it be a video? Well, it could become a video if I wanted to interview the person who wrote the blog post. I might take the content from the blog post and go to a website like Biteable or one of those super easy websites where you can make video shorts. If you just do an internet search for how do I make an animated video, there's all kinds of websites companies out in the world that can help people with zero design knowledge or experience make these kind of short videos. There might be a piece in the blog post that can turn into this short little video. It could be a great way. Again, I've done the research. I have this amazing content that's relevant to my community. This might just be another medium, another way for me to get in touch with more people. Or maybe my blog post launches a question. Maybe I want to do a poll around some of the content. So maybe I put out onto LinkedIn, which now has polling, and I say this week's blog post talked about turning social media content from 1 piece into 10. Asking our community, when you write a blog, how many different times do you usually share it? 1 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 10, more than 10, right? So you put a poll out into the world. Well, what good is putting a poll out into the world? I'm not telling people stuff. I'm not telling them to come and follow me and read about me and buy stuff from me. No, you're not. You're contributing to your community. You're starting a fun conversation. You're going to have people that look through the poll and say, "Oh, you liar." Like 72% of people say they share stuff 10 times. They do not. They just think they do. And so, the point is you are going to engage them. Absolutely. In one of our chat responses that disappeared too fast, I couldn't see the name, but a great point that it sparks that engagement. It's quick and easy. For whatever reason, no judgment, we all love being asked for our opinion. So polls are quick and easy, and they tend to get a lot of feedback. This also helps your overall presence online, because whatever platform you're on, there's an algorithm behind the scenes that is determining if people like what you're sharing. And how do they know that? Well, they know that because you're getting likes, you're engaging in polls, you're leaving comments, people in your community are engaging with you, you're going to get lifted up in the algorithm. So there's so many wins that come through this. So that was one piece of social media, or one piece of content that we just turned into 4 potential pieces of social media content. But you kind of get the general idea. You see how it works a little bit. So I want to encourage you to look through the list of what your peers may have shared in the webinar, in the chat. I'm hoping lots of people shared content. And if lots of people didn't, now would be a good time also to share more ideas that came to your mind. But I'm going to also go through a list of content types just to dust a few more of those cobwebs off. So a reminder again, I made this slide deck available. So Cynthia, I shared it with her, and I know it's accessible to you. So the next couple of slides are going to be a lot of lists. So I'm really emphasizing this because I don't want to lose anybody because they're trying to write down every little thing that's on the screen. Remember that you do have access to this, and you can just go ahead and take notes for yourself to follow up at a later time. Okay, the slides will be posted after the session. That was me trying to cover up for the fact that I forgot to ask about the details. So, all right, very good. So starting off, let's just start on the left-hand side, and you'll see by the image here that this is my little Polaroid photo there at the bottom. It's a little throwback to the days when we took Polaroid pictures. They made a brief comeback, by the way. I was really sorry to see that they didn't stick around. Back in the days when we had those Polaroids, that was the icon, right, of what a Polaroid picture looked like. Because I just wanted to emphasize that this first kind of run is going to be a discussion of things that you can create where it's all about image. It's all about some sort of picture that gets people to stop in their feed. And later in the presentation, I actually have a couple of slides that have examples of images and videos and things in posts so that you can kind of see how different things might either get lost in the shuffle or might really pop. So, all right, left-hand side going through images. How about getting some of your employees out onto your social media site? They may not be super excited about it, but you might be surprised if you ask at the people that are interested in engaging that way. If you put someone's face into a photo, we tend to stop, right? It tends to catch people's attention. So particularly if people can be showcased as successful, at the National Institute for Social Media, one of the most successful posts that we have on a regular basis is every time we have someone who earns their certification, we give them the option to be promoted through NISM. They can certainly opt out, which is always something you want to put out there, no matter who you're talking to. But when we do, we have this like bright orange, because our colors are blue and black and orange. We have this bright orange kind of background and their picture. And off the charts, every platform, it's where we get a lot of engagement because it's a real person. It's not a nameless, faceless company or thing or item. It's a real person. So think about your employees. Is there something connected to your employees that could be showcased, featured, shared, talked about? So the other piece is kind of the other half of that coin is other community members. Are there people within your community that are doing amazing things? Put a call out on a regular basis in your email, on your social media. Say things like, we want to feature our community members. We want to feature our partners. We want to help you meet each other. We want to help you be successful. Tell us what you're doing. So let's say I'm part of, I have my GPHR certification. I work in human resources. I'm currently working on an anthology for human resource professionals that work internationally. If you couldn't guess by my background, I'm a big fan of the whole world. And if HRCI reached out to me, I would jump on that, right? I would say, absolutely, please profile the amazing work we're doing at St. Mary's as we're pulling together all of these experts and writing this book. You get incredible content that's very, very shareable. Your community, right? Like your HR, if I go up with that example, the HRCI community sees something that is of interest to them. So your value in your community's eyes goes up because now they're going to watch for the book. But they also see how well you treat the people who are part of your community. And everybody wants to be part of that. I think our current climate in the United States is a really great example. If you just take a moment to reflect on how it feels to be around people who are using positive language and who are talking about solutions and inclusion and things like that, compared to how it feels to be around people who are angry or people who are excluding or people who are only talking about themselves. Even if nothing offensive or consciously separating is happening, you aren't drawn to people who only talk about themselves, right? So I'm cheating. Cynthia is doing a great job of gathering questions, but I did see a question about how do you get submissions? So I just want to address that really quickly. I do recommend some kind of talk to your legal team. Amy Jauman is not a lawyer and does not issue legal advice. But create a form and have like a Google form that you can share so that people can kind of answer a series of questions. You can also put a little disclaimer in there and you can have them then upload a photo. So that's what we do and it works pretty well. Continuing on with images, again, I'm just going to give you this kind of as a fire hose and I want you all to just take note because then we're going to talk about how to apply this. But people love behind the scenes stuff. We love to be in the know, just like we like to be asked what our opinion is. We love to be in the know. If you have something cool happening, if you're moving into a new office space, if you have a really cool, like visually cool looking process that you can share, if you have something unique about the city that you are headquartered in. Anything that is behind the scenes footage feels real and honest and like your community member is an insider. And it's often overlooked because we have this mindset where we think we have to be polished and perfect. And let me tell you, it is just as appealing to the average consumer for people to see the real you. It's probably more appealing. Now, there are always exceptions, of course, right? You don't want to inundate your feed with nonsensical stuff that doesn't add any value, right? You don't want to have 9 out of every 10 posts being, photos from the gardens around the property where your offices are. I mean, like, that's right. Don't take it to the extreme. But when you have those little pop-up moments, maybe you are speaking at a conference because someday we'll all be together again. Maybe you do a Facebook Live just before you go on, and you say like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm here at the ICE Exchange. I'm getting ready to pop up on stage to talk about, blah, blah, blah. Here's what I'm doing to get ready. And I love being in New Orleans and, blah, 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 all that good stuff. It's just such a way to connect in a meaningful way. The other idea too is text on images. So you run into a little bit of an issue with this if you do like a Facebook ad. They have rules around it. But that's another thing that a lot of times, even if you do a search, like do an internet search to kind of brainstorm and get some ideas, you can do some pretty cool stuff. Like, why not take a certificate with your brand on it and put and like an image of the word success, and just stamp the word over the top of the image, and then put that out onto your social media posts, right? I mean, your text on images a lot of times. So remember, we don't like reading comprehension, tiny little attention spans, right? So you have to keep it short. But text on images can be a really cool way to make sure that, or to inspire people and to get their attention. You have to remember, most people, overwhelmingly, every platform, although it is gonna vary from platform to platform, are going to be operating on a mobile device. So your image isn't going to be any bigger than this, and this is if they blow it up to the size of their phone. So don't do a super long quote, and don't do something that doesn't have enough contrast, like something that's hard to read. So don't do like navy blue on blue, because unless it's like a baby blue, because that high contrast is needed for people to be able to read it. Also, script is lovely, but if nobody can read the really beautiful looking type, your message isn't going to get through. So make sure that whatever font you choose is also easy to read. I also encourage you to think about our next item on the list, collages and albums. Different social media platforms allow you to do this in different ways, but you don't have to stick to just one photo. What if you are rolling out a new product? Maybe it's like a self-study kit. So you've got a book and a practice exam and I don't know, something else. So you go to PicStitch. PicStitch, is that the one I use? You can do an internet search and find collage makers. And you can put these photos together in fun and creative ways as a way of launching a product. And it's using apps and tools like that are a way for the people who are creatively not as great, that would be me. It allows us to operate within recommended design boundaries and produce great content quickly and easily. Also think about creative lighting and cool angles. So, or even cool pictures of different things. One thing that I sometimes work with authors too, who are launching a book or whatever. One of my favorite things to do is to do a video or photos of when the author gets the shipment of the first draft of their book, because authors out there know this, it's a really big deal. When your book, as far as you know it, lives on your computer, and then one day it arrives and you have it in your hand, it's a really big deal. Pictures, videos, things like that can hold a lot of emotion, but it's behind the scenes, right? So we forget about things like that. So is there a way that we can take some fun and cool pictures of the torn open box, with some nice sunshine, kind of coming in, and maybe we take the picture from kind of below the box to give it a cool picture, so we can read the spine of the book, but otherwise it looks like chaos behind it. Have fun. Don't think that just because you are in a certification realm that everything has to be buttoned up. At this point, when you're on social media, what you are doing is you're trying to stand out, and you're trying to bring people into your community so that you can talk to them about the good stuff, about what you want to share with them. But first, you have to grab their attention. You have to remind them that you are the community that they want to be a part of. We already talked about infographics, but I'll mention that again. I use Pick2Chart. That's Pikto chart. Any of these tools, by the way, whether it's video makers, and things along those lines, always check to see if there are education and nonprofit discounts if you opt to sign up for a membership. So that is something, working at St. Mary's as an educator, that I often take advantage of, because there are a lot of these companies that have really deep discounts. All right, shifting to the other side, and by the way, I should have also explained this. I created this little kind of chart design for you so that when you do, after the session, get this download, as you go through these, you can make kind of little notes off to the right for the pieces that work well for you. The intent is not for everyone to use every one of these things. The idea is that you can kind of start with that one piece that you already have, and go down the list and say, like, okay, when I look at these, I have 3 total slides here for you. When I look at these things, how can I kind of modify this content? So know that you're going to be skipping over a lot of these. Testimonials. If you can get a video testimonial, please do. And testimonials, I prefer to be video, of course. It gives you like a lot of text to work with. They can be captured on a smartphone, and in fact, testimonials on a smartphone tend to test better because they're real, right? It doesn't look manufactured. It looks like somebody, one of my favorite pictures that the National Institute for Social Media put out, and it's a little bit because at the time that she got certified, she was our intern, but one of our marketing employees, when she got certified, she took a picture of herself outside of the testing center doing like a little thumbs up that she had just passed her certification. Now, she was an intern for us. Going in, she had the plan to do that, right? Like, it was very coordinated, but looking at that picture, you can see and feel the pure joy of having passed your certification exam. I love it. And people, even if they can't articulate it, they can see and feel that as well. So is there a way that you can prompt and encourage people to do things like that? Is there a way when you're at conferences, again, when we all come together again, that you can ask people prompts that will give you great stuff to work with? If they don't want to be on video, maybe they'll just give you permission to quote them. Related to that, teasers and short videos are great as well. Do you have a webinar series like this? Can you take a short clip of something that's talked about and use that as a teaser? Or maybe you can take a 90-minute webinar and cut it into 10 to 15-minute little pieces. And instead of having like one class, you have a whole bunch of little pieces of webinar content. The explainer videos, that might be something that you're not familiar with. I would recommend, if it's a completely new concept to you, just do a little internet search about it. But an explainer video is essentially something that goes through steps that are simple. So for example, NISM might have an explainer video for how to get recertified for existing social media professionals. So take a look at that concept of explainer videos and look at how you can put stuff out into your community to make everybody smarter. Because if you create this great explainer video, again, sites like Biteable or things like that, you become the site that everybody wants to know and follow and learn from. Similarly, there are slideshow options. So this is almost kind of like an evolution of putting out collages and albums and things like that. Are there different tools and ways that you could share a series of slides? It might be a short video. It might be, depending on the tool that you're using, a lot of different ways of getting that content out there. Two quick ones here. If you do have video, because remember, we're taking that one piece of content and we're seeing how much we can get from it. If you do have a video, is it a good content to be translated into other languages? It could be that you take a video and translate it into another language and post it as a blog post. There's oftentimes people overlook the fact that with many videos, there is the audio component is just begging to be a written component, or even translating with a speaker over a video, or with subtitles as well. If you start to explore YouTube, I won't have time to go into all the details for this today. There's a lot of options on how to present text within YouTube, and actually within that space, it's also very important to add as much text as possible for search engine optimization and all that good stuff. So translating, transcribing video, just making sure you're getting the most out of that video you have. I also recommend people collect B-roll. So B-roll is, again, that behind the scenes stuff that maybe you don't have that much use for, but if you are teaching classes, if you are bringing people together, if you have your team goes out, or maybe they Zoom for a happy hour, or they go out for a lunch, just capturing that moving video and keeping it. And a lot of times that B-roll, that behind the scenes kind of unplanned type of stuff, can be a really cool addition when you are talking through something and you want to have movement in the background on a video. So instead of just staring at a PowerPoint slide, your audience might be watching your team moving about on a conference floor or something along those lines. So just thinking about capturing B-roll. So now moving on, we had photos, right? So now I want to talk a little bit about stuff. So I already got you, I hope, thinking about existing resources. So this is actually just a really quick rundown. As I'm talking though, please share other ideas that might come up for what stuff you have to share. Because I think within the certification realm, this is one of the more kind of challenging areas, because we're not selling a widget, right? So it can be a little bit tricky. So blogs and white papers, pretty common. Make sure that with your blogs and white papers, you are heavily integrating your writers into the promotion process. So if Amy Gelman writes a blog for you, make sure that when you put it out on Facebook and LinkedIn, that you are tagging Amy Gelman, because you're drastically increasing your audience. Because by tagging someone in a social media post, you are bringing their audience over to your page with a little bit of an alert. You're at least alerting the algorithm. It isn't a perfect trade, right? Like, it's not like Amy has 1,000 followers, so if I tag Amy, 1,000 people will see my post. That's not how it works. The algorithms are intentionally secret and constantly change, so that people like me can't game them and tell you how to float up to the top of the list. But there are practices that always have positive results. Sample test questions. So remember I told you I just took my GPHR exam? I had so much of I had just such a struggle for like 5 years working for NISM, when everybody wanted test questions, and they wanted sample test questions, and they wanted more sample test questions, and they wanted to talk about what this score on the sample test meant. And I think I'm a pretty open and loving person, but there were just many instances where I was like, oh my goodness, if one more person asks me for more sample test questions, I'm going to lose my mind. And then wouldn't you know it, when I started studying for my GPHR, all I wanted were sample test questions, because I learned that as I was going through, I was nervous that I wasn't comprehending the content and that I wouldn't be able to spit it out. So I wanted these sample test questions to help me feel more confident. When you learn things like that about your industry, make a note, tell your peers, talk about stuff like that and say, hey, I think our community would really like this kind of stuff. So why not? So obviously you don't put exam, I don't have to tell this group that, right? You wouldn't be putting exam questions out there, but you might put something out there related to maybe you have a guide for how to prepare to take an exam. Maybe you have something around testing that can help people to have their interest piqued about what might happen. You may not be putting sample test questions out. You might just be saying, in our prep class, we provide sample test questions. It could be as simple as that. What do people cue in on? Free webinars, if you aren't having them, I would recommend that you start. You have experts in your community, if not within your organization. A lot of people get excited. I love talking about stuff like this with people. It genuinely brings me joy to help people because this can be such an overwhelming process and thing to tackle for so many people. Everybody has those people in their community. Putting a call out and saying, what do you know? And how do you want to share it with your community can be great content for your social media, and it can bring new people to your pages. Frequently asked questions within your industry is another great one. An FAQ, a single FAQ, can be a blog post, but you might also consider promoting your FAQ page. You might not have FAQs. You might have RAQs, randomly asked questions. But if somebody's out there asking a question, there's a good chance there's a significant chunk of people who are wondering the same thing. Remember, how can you be a contributing member to your community? Answering questions is a really good one. Lists and recommendations are also very good from the standpoint of being a place to know and follow, but also because if you're making recommendations, you also have the opportunity to tag people. So for example, let's say you recommend a book. And you might link, let's say you put it out on Facebook, you might link the book's Facebook page, because it might have its own Facebook page, and you might link the author, because the author probably has their own business Facebook page, on your page as you say, hey, we read this, we love it. And why not host a webinar where people come and they have a book club discussion around that book. There you go. You got a twofer right there. You got a recommendation and a webinar. So, but the point is, the richer the post with those tags and those connections, the better. And lists and recommendations are a fantastic way to do that. They are also a great way, kind of like the polls, to get engagement. So you might say, I just put one of these out. What did I just ask somebody? You put out something like, I think the 3 best ways to stay energized in the afternoon when you're working from home are, blank, blank, blank. Making sure you always have a meeting where you're talking to people, drinking mud water, and using a standing desk. What do you all think? Remember, we're asking people's opinions, but you can kick off things like that with lists and start the wheels turning and start the engagement going. So. And by the way, if you do things like I just did and say things that might need clarification, like some of you might be genuinely concerned about what mud water is, don't worry, it's a real product. It's not actually mud. That is also a great way to pique interest and get conversations started. I gotta stop saying things like that, or you're all gonna drift away and be Googling all kinds of random things I'm saying. So on the other side, so we've got our existing resources. Please chat in if you have an existing resource that I didn't share that you think other people might benefit from seeing. But let's talk about products. So there might just be a product that you sell. Make sure that you have that in that featured rotation. Avoid being a contributing member to the community by saying, buy this, right? Instead, feature your products with quotes, with how people have used it, things that are just generally beneficial. People are still going to know it's an ad post, but just try to be conversational about it so it isn't such a turnoff. You've all seen those. You know what I'm talking about. Also, take a step back at your products and see if you don't have a product page or categories as well as individual products. So for example, NISM, we have multiple ways to study for the exam. You can just take the exam. You can buy the book and take the exam. You can do a self-study plan where you have like a little bit of tutoring hours. You can get into our on-demand training, right? There's all of these different ways. And that sometimes those ranges can be a great thing to promote because you never know what in these posts might be the thing that catches someone's attention, right? You may not know like someone who thought, oh, I didn't even realize that this was potentially an option. Customer reviews. I love customer reviews because again, just like testimonials, they're so genuine. So if you could do a screenshot of somebody who left a customer review on your website, sass it up a little bit in Canva, C-A-N-V-A. There is that is a tool where you can make really cool graphics, and NISM actually just did a fantastic webinar on that, hosted by a certified agency that we work with, Forge Social. They did a really nice job of showing us how to maximize Canva. So you can take something like that that's really simple, put it into a tool like Canva, and make it a really cool graphic. And then your customers are talking to your potential customers. What a great message. Also look for cross promotions. So Amy Gelman, the author, wrote a book for the National Institute for Social Media. Cross promotion. Amy needs promotion, NISM needs promotion. We work together. Who do you have in your community where you have partnerships like that? And then also bundles. Of all the products that you have in offerings, there might be 10 different ways to talk about 3 different products just by how you pair them all up. All right, our last category is about community. And community is really about conversations. And if you haven't noticed this, we start to overlap with a lot of these things because a lot of these content ideas are going to fall into multiple categories. But if we do something like a live posting, so we're live streaming on Facebook, we're live streaming on LinkedIn, the first time you do it, it's absolutely terrifying. Just lean in, right? Like it is what it is, and you'll do it. I did one for NISM early on with Facebook Live where the whole streaming recording was upside down. I don't remember how that happened, but I was on site and I was, live streaming a Q&A with a local. I did it on Facebook's birthday, and it was like this whole fun thing. And then I completely ruined because I did it upside down. But I am still standing. It didn't kill me, right? And it is what it is. You're going to go out. You're going to cut your teeth. You're going to learn. And you're gonna keep doing better. But if you never take that first step and schedule a question and answer session with an expert in your industry, or try going live at a conference, and you risk too much noise in the background, you risk somebody walking like into your like photobombing you. That's just all part of the energy that comes with joining your community and getting comfortable on social media. The nice thing too, I think that has drastically increased within the pandemic is we've gotten more forgiving with glitches and mistakes like that. So we were talking at the very beginning of this, Cynthia and I, when we were getting set up, we were talking about people accidentally staying on mute and all those things. We're getting savvier, but we are also increasing the number of people who have ventured out, been there, done that, tried to do these different things, and had things not go perfectly. And it's improving the conversations. So don't be afraid to try it and join us. Contests are another really fun way to get people engaged, particularly if you have something that you can offer that is really appealing, right? So like if you can, and every organization is different with what they are financially able to do, with what they are, with what they have to offer, but just kind of thinking through kind of some of those options there. Expert interviews are another good one. So particularly right now, we have a lot of opportunities with this because people are getting more and more comfortable with Zoom interviews, and with the being open to having those kind of recorded conversations. But experts are everywhere and in the neatest niche topics. And one of the things that we learned over the years with NISM was we would often talk about big topics that we got a lot of questions about, but then we get a lot of activity too around really, really, really specific things that nobody else was talking about, right? Like it's long tail topics. If you have not researched that, you take a look at long tail brainstorming, finding the things that people are asking about, but nobody's talking about. So, or nobody's providing answers for. Widen your scope for who an expert is, and bring them into the conversation. Now, remember, you're tagging them, you're bringing them in. So not only are you providing great content for your community, you're also bringing that experts community into your own community. So you're growing that way, which actually segues very nicely into partnerships. So take a look at any partnerships that you might have, and see what benefits are out there. If someone is working with your organization, or let's say they work for a company, do they get a discount when they apply for your certification? You should be talking about that unendingly, because you're not just talking to the company that gets that discount. You're talking to a company that doesn't have that discount that they're offering for their employees, that is now then going to reach out to you and say, hey, we want to offer that discount for our employees. We want you promoting us. Events that partners are hosting. So often people get so focused on, okay, we have to do this stuff. We have to host these webinars. We have to, no, you don't. Are you kidding me? You are supposed to be a supportive community member. You should be talking about what everybody in your community is doing, what people out there might think is cool. For my St. Mary's, I have a LinkedIn page that I post for the HR community associated with St. Mary's. I just posted a webinar that Lucidchart is putting together for, it's about the adding a human component to remote work. Looked really cool. It's really great for my HR community. I don't have any stake or connection to Lucidchart. It's just good stuff for our community. And then also partner resources. If a partner that you have and want to support has something that's really excellent that could help other people in your community, share it, let people know about it. People tend to think that their social media landscape is so precious. They can only talk about the things that they're trying to sell. And it's such a mistake. You have to think of it as a conversation. You have to think about it, about how can I be a contributing and valuable member in my community? Because a lot of times it is, of course, bringing people to your website and standing out as that knowledgeable person, as that person that is providing all this great stuff. But it's also being the person that's joining and encouraging the right conversations. So one kind of last thought on content in general. This is a little Minnesota shot for all of you that don't know that much of our year looks a little something like this. I really encourage you to prepare what's called evergreen content as well. So evergreen content is something that can be used at any point in time with little notice. So quotes or stats or success tips, things that it's not tied to anything at all. First of all, if they are humorous, inspirational, or educational, they're likely to get shared. They can be kind of fun and light, but they come in handy when you need them. When you need filler, when your marketing budget gets paused, when your social media person is out sick, when something comes up where all of a sudden you need some content and you didn't have it prepared, that evergreen content can be a real lifesaver. This kind of content is also fun to kind of sprinkle in because particularly if you have a little bit heavier content most of the time, putting something lighter in the mix will often trigger that engagement. So, all right. So I want to segue just a tiny bit more about partnerships. So I alluded to them already, But I wanted to pause and ask you to just now think about who in your community produces great content. So where do you go in your community for really good content? I do think you should avoid direct competitors, but expand your thought and reach a little bit to who are these great people in my community doing smart things. So at St. Mary's, so I run the HR program. It's easy, right? My smart HR people are SHRM and HRCI. They're amazing. They have amazing content. Everybody's talking about them, and I'm so fortunate to work with both of those organizations because they're writing great stuff. These are partnerships I have to maintain, but they are also things that I need to know how to leverage. So when I am leveraging something, I'm making sure that I'm always tagging the person or group I'm working with. I am sharing events that they are offering, and we're working together on and offline. So I've said it already a couple of times, that reminder in the middle of the screen. Don't think about yourself. Don't think about how do I get people to NISM, right? Like, think about how you can make the community that you are an active part of an even better place to be. So on the left is an example of one of our educators, actually. She happens to be in Germany, which is really fun and cool. But if you look at this post, we could have said, hey, on Wednesday, Lena's going to do an Instagram takeover. But we took it an extra step further and we tagged her. So we did the little @ symbol. And for those of you that are like, Amy, I don't know how to do any of this stuff, that's tactics. You can email me, remember, it's right there on the screen. And I can get you some resources and stuff like that. But the important piece is to bring people into the conversation, make your posts rich. You see the hashtags are there as well. NISM also has a whole webinar on hashtags. We go on that for days as well. But hashtags are a way that you either start or join a conversation. They bring people together. All of this stuff makes these posts more appealing to the algorithm, and it brings other communities together. St. Mary's on the right-hand side. So Amy, the three-dimensional human, struck up a partnership with HED on behalf of St. Mary's. And I said, hey, my students would really like to be HED members. And HED said, hey, we'd really like your students to be in our membership. So we give all of my HR students a free membership to HED as long as they're a student. So first of all, that's a good partnership. Second of all, when I put that out on social media, St. Mary's, tag HED so that when we're talking about them, both of our communities are benefiting. Making those posts, particularly with partners, as rich as possible. And see, it's not just all social media stuff, right? Like it's on and offline stuff. So with our last bit, we're just going to do an overview of stuff to remember about our specific platforms. For those of you a little nervous about not having time to leave questions, don't worry. The heavy part was those 3 sheets with the content ideas. I do want to remind you, though, that Cynthia is going to be gathering questions and kind of facilitating a Q&A at the end. So it's a good time to start kind of preparing those questions and getting ready for that, because we're going to be heading into that pretty soon. I'm also a extroverted communicator, and I recognize that introverted communicators often need a little time to reflect on questions. So this is me trying to meet you where you are. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay, we're going to look at 5 platforms, and we're just going to take a quick look at each of them. There are more platforms. There are more ways of connecting. We aren't going to talk about email. We're not going to talk about your website. We're not going to talk about TikTok or Snapchat. We're just going to talk about a handful of social media sites to kind of get you started. You should always go where your audience is. So if you are like, oh, I'm so bummed she's not going to talk about, whatever, don't let me bring you down. Go do that research, learn the platform. We're just going to take a look at kind of some of the more common ones. I want to start this, though, by talking about stuff that's always true and is always good advice. And it looks a little something like this. You should always know your audience. So if you are in a very serious field, and you know that humor would not go well on your social media posts, then don't use humor. I don't care who tells you to use it. If you know your audience and you know that won't go well, don't do it. Learn what your audience engages with. Pay attention to the posts that generate buzz, comments, and engagement, and try to examine what about them you think grabbed their attention. Also, look at what people really need, not what they aspire to need, and know the difference. So for example, I ran a Facebook group for a while, and it was a group of about 75 people probably. And they said, "Hey, Amy, since you're part of this group, we'd really like your help with social media because we heard you know about that stuff." And I was running this thing where I said, "Hey, if people have questions, we're here to learn from each other. Please submit your questions." People new to the group would submit questions publicly. I would share them, and we'd get tons of great advice. Seasoned members of the group would not post questions, because what I learned was there was this element of the community where they felt having a question was a weakness. They also repeated advice. So like the same or different 5 different people would give the same advice, because in that community, it was really important for them to look smart and like that they were the go-to person. You might guess I did not last very long in that community. That's not my jam, but it was one of the most poignant learnings I had ever had, because I was like, wow, it's just so clear by how they're responding and what they're engaging with, what is important to them. So I shifted and I started taking questions, not publicly. I started taking them privately with no connection to who submitted them. And my questions went through the roof, because of course now I was talking to the entire community because I was able to do so anonymously. What you learn and how you apply it is going to be all over the map, but just an example. Also, pay attention to metrics and be flexible. Make changes, test different things out. When you're ready, invest in ads. Don't do it now, right? I mean, if you're just kind of starting out, learn how to run ads or hire somebody to run ads for you. It's not, I mean, there are pieces of it that's simple, but the strategy and build behind it is not simple. Get help, because it's a new venture and it's a new thing for many people. We also encourage you to learn from your competitors. When NISM does consulting, the first thing we do is an audit and a competitor analysis, because we want to see what people who are in your community are doing, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. There is no reason to reinvent the wheel. See what's already out there and learn from them. I encourage you to use sites like Pixabay and Unsplash. I've mentioned a couple other resources. There's a lot of resources out there that will just make your life easier. Pixabay and Unsplash are high quality photos that are rights free, as long as you're not selling them or anything like that. You can use them for your blog posts, and it's very fun, right? Because there's pictures of everything. I found a dog wearing a jean jacket on there. I mean, there's photos of a little bit of everything. Also, fully set up your pages. Complete your bios, add page info, make sure all of that is detailed. I mentioned this earlier, always assume that everyone will be engaging with you on a mobile device. So that means no tiny font. That means if you're going to put a video out there, a talking head is probably better than someone talking full length, like with a chalkboard or something like that. Because just assume people are going to be on mobile. We're only moving in the direction of more mobile. So it's a smart play no matter what. Unless you know your audience and you know that they will be intaking this material in a different way. Always use a call to action. Never underestimate how much people don't know what to do. So if you want them to sign up, if you want them to visit your webpage, if you want them to leave a comment, end your post with that statement. Invite them to engage. When we are talking like this, I might say something like, "Well, this is interesting, huh?" And you hear that, you get that little cue. you would respond. You know, we have this engagement that keeps the conversation, but we don't have that on social media. You have to tell people, right? Like you got to ask them to engage, and always use storytelling. You know, it's you can help people understand the good that you're putting into the world by telling stories, success stories, things other people have overcome, things that let people know they're not alone. There's so much good that storytelling can do. And if there's any teachers on the line, you know this, it is much easier to help people remember a concept if you can put it out in a story, right? As opposed to just trying to get them to memorize something. It's the same concept as being memorable on social media. And we have some kind of pretty heavy stuff that we're trying to get out into the world. So as you look at all of this stuff, I want you to ask for much less than you give, and I want you to share much less than you engage. And the share versus engage is confusing to a lot of people, but think about being a contributing member to your community. And it is often having conversations with people. It's often leaving comments. It's often posting about an event your community member has coming up. If you take the approach of saying, we are amazing and we need to tell the world, and everything that goes out into your digital presence is all about you, it's very hard to not sound like a walking commercial. And what do people do with commercials? They click away unless they have an immediate painful need. But you lose a huge percentage of people by simply talking at them. All right. So I'm not sure if y'all have heard of Facebook or not, but there's 2.74 billion monthly active users. So an MAU is an important number because that is not just accounts that are out there, some of which might be dead, blah, 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 all that stuff. These are people that at least once a month are logging into Facebook. Many people are on Facebook daily. Many people leave their Facebook open all day. So one could be argued they're minute active users. But the idea is Facebook has a huge presence. It skews a little bit older, but there is certainly a wide variety of users. There are also some industries that have a higher prevalence on different platforms, and so I'm going to encourage you to look that up yourself. So for example, I had to recruit some nurses at one point in time. None of them were on LinkedIn. They were all on Facebook. It just happens sometimes that industries also line up. Facebook loves video. So whether you are live streaming or posting original videos, the algorithms don't like videos from other sites as much. Facebook, it will help your presence to use video. And Facebook users like video, short and active and engaging. Don't make people wait. If you do have a video, make sure you don't have a long, like 30-second song playing with like credits at the beginning. You have something like 1 to 2 seconds to convince people to keep watching. I'm not even joking. So you have to start strong right out of the gate. I'm going to show you some feeds in just a second here, but make sure that what you're putting out there is visually appealing and that all your posts are branded and rich. So when we look at Facebook posts like this, so these are chunks of Facebook posts, but look at how some of them pop. Bottom left-hand corner, the beautiful flower against that beautiful woodwork. It's just, it leaves you with a nice feeling. Bottom right-hand corner, we had Lena's Instagram takeover. It's bright branded colors. It's a face. It's a human person. The graphic even kind of demonstrates what it is we're doing. In the middle, the St. Mary's red branded piece. So that's only got the 3 colors on it, red, black, white, but those are our colors, hello. But the red tint, think about how that stands out on a feed, right? Upper left-hand corner, bright, colorful pictures. Middle picture faces tend to do really well. the upper right-hand corner, kind of that text over image example. I mean, lots of good examples here. Find your own examples. Scroll through Facebook if you're going to start a campaign there and experience it through a different lens. What stands out to you and why? A little bit about LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, we all know, is the professional site. I'm guessing most of us would benefit from a presence on LinkedIn. They have 3 new members a second, so it's safe to say that they're growing. And they are getting into the live stream game much faster than they had been even in the previous year. If you want to stand out on LinkedIn, my advice to you is to invest in thought leadership. Put your subject matter experts out there. Start conversations where people in your industry can have smart conversations about how to do good things. That tends to do really well on LinkedIn. And this is just a good rule in general. Make sure you're giving info 90% at least of the time and only putting an ask out there 10% of the time. And the one qualifier there, polls and surveys and stuff, I don't usually count as an ask because a lot of times you're starting a conversation there. That is a give. But the activity on LinkedIn where we don't get a lot of responses tend to be more of the asks. There are 400 hours of video uploaded to YouTube, which is very popular around the world, every single minute. So that also pretty active site. People like YouTube to fix things, DIY content. So what is your community wondering about? What problem do they want to solve? Create a video, brand it, brand your YouTube page, and get to know people by solving that problem. So for example, the story I like to tell is my fireplace broke. I have a gas fireplace, obviously. And I'm not even going to attempt to fix that. Called somebody. He came out and he looked at the brand that it was, and he went to his phone and he watched a YouTube video to learn about that specific brand. So in the back of my mind, I was kind of laughing because I'm like, well, I feel like I could have done that, but I couldn't have. But it's how a lot of people are functioning as a default. Whether and it's not just like crafts and things like that. You might have test takers. You might have people who are really struggling with compliance within your industry, and they're looking kind of for those resources. They will go to YouTube to search, like they would go to Google and do a search. And do keep your content short. If you need to, create a series of videos. Keep people engaged from one to the next. Long gone are the days where 2-hour videos were accepted well. And in fact, YouTube has lowered, I'm drawing a blank on the exact amount of time, but they'll even cap how long of the video you can upload, and which is all to help you, right? These rules come into place just to help you. Instagram also, of course, on the rise, 140 million US users. These are kind of important little differentiators. Creativity is really big here. With image is most important. So Instagram is interesting as well because a lot happens on Instagram because of influencers. It has a little bit to do with the demographic that hangs out on Instagram. But it's well worth your time if that's where your market is to take a look at who is moving people, right? Like who's getting people to do what. Branded hashtags or hashtags in general are also very common. And you'll notice on Instagram the importance of leveraging your bio. So you can't put links and things like that into your Instagram original post, but you can direct them back to check bio for info. You'll see a lot of info on that. You can stand out. This is also just my excuse to put an adorable dog picture in a presentation. It's something I try to do as often as possible. But just look at the simple things that you can do with a square. You can do graphical, like text type stuff. You can do a lot with photographs. This picture, so this is technically BarkBox, but I mean, this is a very on topic, timely message. They just did a mask awareness campaign in an adorable way. Oh my goodness, I'm just dying looking at it. And it's a showstopper, right? Like it makes people kind of stop and laugh. There's a lot that you can do if you open yourself up to it. And finally, Twitter. It is probably the one you hear the least about, but there is still a lot of activity, particularly in certain industries. 145 million daily active users, and that age demographic again skews a little bit older. With Twitter, the thing to remember is to keep it short. I remember when they bumped from 140 to 280 characters, reporting that 40 characters, not words, they still get the most engagement. Short and sweet, especially on Twitter. But don't keep it so short that you don't have rich content. Tags, hashtags, images, video, all critical. Two things on time management, project management, and then we're talking about questions. So I told you I have to talk about this because it's so important. As you play around in the wonderful world of social media, the creative part of it works against us, and the huge funness of it all, because people look at these platforms everybody can access and they see that it's free, and they look at viral videos and they think, oh, that's easy to do. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes research. It takes learning. It takes a lot. So approach your social media strategy and goals just like you would approach anything else you'd be investing in. Create those SMART goals. Feedback from people like me at NISM or consultants or whoever you're working with to help you develop those goals, to help you kind of put together something that when you go forward and talk to your key stakeholders, it allows you to engage with them and meet them where they are to talk in a meaningful way. So you should be able to explain everything simply so that the people that you're talking to will understand the value and the terms that mean the most to them. If you are talking to your CFO, going into that meeting, your CFO is just naturally going to be inclined to want to know the numbers, the finances, the ROI, all of that stuff. If you are talking to your marketing person, they're going to be thinking about things like time and what's this going to do to my staff, right? If you're talking to your COO, they might just be like, big picture, please. Tell me what this has to do with anything that we're doing. Your compliance officer, they would like to know the rules. That's just what compliance officers do. So bring together in a clear, meaningful, and measurable way everything that you want to do today. So we have this beautiful long laundry list of things and ideas. Talk about how it's going to move your brand forward and be prepared to meet people where they are so that you can then take all this fantastic work you've done and make it as effective as possible. So with that, I am going to ask Cynthia to help facilitate some questions. I have not been watching the chat. A few of them did float up. And I answered a question here or there, but I just want to invite people again to send their questions in and communicate that way, because this is the end of the planned content that I have.
Thank you so much, Amy. There are a lot of comments in the chat sharing resources, some thoughts on accessibility with regard to the content. So it's all real great stuff, and I encourage everyone to put in their questions. I know you said not to take questions, but man, I've been jotting down stuff furiously as I am thinking like, oh, I want to remember that. Oh, I want to go back and look at that, and just kind of coming up with some ideas. So I wanted to get us started with a question going back to just starting this. Where are groups, in your experience, where do they get hung up? Where does social media fail, maybe for organizations or associations in general, and maybe with certification groups? Where are places that we get hung up? Are we overthinking it? Are we not leveraging it enough? Are we overposting, underposting? Where are the common mistakes?
Yeah, so I think certification groups, just like everybody else, are most likely to get hung up at the very, very beginning, which isn't that depressing, but when something is big, like a digital presence, and scary, like the wild, wild west that is social media, it's very easy to get paralyzed at the start. So that's why when you bring a consultant in, whether it's an internal consultant or an external consultant, the first thing they're going to do is an audit of where you are today and an analysis of your market. Because what that creates, so you step back from that and you kind of have this little roadmap. And then instead of starting with a blank screen, you're starting with, okay, like we have an activity here, but not much activity there. And you kind of have that starting point. That audit and competitor analysis also allows you to set goals. So then those SMART goals can get kicked in so that you can say, okay, what is reasonable? I was working with a certification group once, actually, a couple of years ago. And understandably, they were like, okay, we have a 10,000 person community. We have this huge community. If we put a Facebook post out, we're going to get like 4,000 comments. And what are we going to do? Like, what if we break Facebook? You know, because when you've never done it before, that's what happens, right? Like you automatically go to every possible scenario that you don't have the resources to manage. So the conversation that we had was, let me show you your competitor who has the same size audience and look at how much activity they have. Like, we're not in this alone. We can learn from kind of what's out there, but only if you know how to navigate those waters and set those goals so you're continually moving forward in those small steps. And it might just be one platform at a time. You know, there's nothing saying that every certification group has to be on at least 3 platforms. If somebody tells you that, they're lying, right? You have to work with the resources you have and set those manageable, measurable goals.
So one of the comments in our chat was around a suggestion or a strategy that a group is using on having an Instagram takeover from one of their people, so to speak. So it got to thinking around you know, people who are doing training. Maybe they're doing like media training to prepare spokespeople who might be out there. Do you recommend training? I mean, the idea of some of our certificates and subject matter experts are probably more comfortable in this realm. Some of our leaders might not be as comfortable. So do you advise training? You know, how much hand-holding are we doing? And, you know, is it valuable to get members from kind of across your demographic involved, even if that involves hand-holding a little bit more or training them on how to use certain platforms?
Yeah, and so full disclosure, when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. So I'm a teacher. I tend to think training is the best approach for everything. So I will always say, especially for an Instagram takeover or some kind of shared promotion, collaboration, conversation, and education between the parties involved is incredibly valuable, but not just for the reasons you listed. So great reason number 1, it will make your leadership more comfortable. Great reason number 2, it will avoid missteps that you maybe just hadn't anticipated. But the third benefit that most people don't think about is in that collaboration and education, what you'll see is that the partner is energized and gets more ideas. It just happens naturally. So they probably had this, you know, this kind of thought, and then by talking and providing guidance and things along those lines, they, you know, it just got even better. When you talk to your key stakeholders, first of all, relinquishing control of your digital presence to someone else, it may not be a step that your leadership is ready to take, and that's okay. That's an envelope I would say don't push, because it could backfire and cause them to view you as reckless or things along those lines. But if they have questions or they're a little hesitant, one kind of convincing language strategy approach that I like to take is talking about how much more influential peer-to-peer conversations are than instructor or organization to audience. So That's why reviews, another question you can ask people is, how many of you read reviews before you buy something on Amazon, right? We trust the people who are like us that don't have any skin in the game. And so when you allow an Instagram takeover or you do kind of that partnership, you can deepen the connection you make to your potential audience. So my point is, it's well worth the risk if your key stakeholders feel open to the conversation and just need more information. That's the angle I usually recommend you take.
Okay. You gave us a lot of great content ideas. Is there a piece of content or an approach or general themes of content that you recommend avoiding? I know you said kind of the avoid selling. You know, we don't want to just sell. We want to have an angle to it, so to speak. Are there other things that are, you know, more? I'm guessing that, you know, groups have to kind of experiment with their content to see what their organization, is it images, is it a testimonial, is it a story that people are going to really respond to? Is there content that you recommend avoiding?
Yeah, so the only thing that comes to mind is to avoid negative posts or polarizing content, unless it is somehow connected to your brand, right? So TMZ, does TMZ even still exist? I don't know, like the trashy news site, right? They're going to post negative stuff about celebrities, right? Because it's what people expect. But the overwhelming majority of people, even if a competitor of yours falls down on something, posting about it or reveling in it reflects negatively on you, as does negative posts about laws that pass that negatively impact you. Just always look at the other side of that coin. We're disappointed with the ruling that passed Congress today, and these are the action steps that we are taking to make sure our community is heard about our concerns, right? Like, just always making sure you have that informed, educated, positive response. And lest you think it's a Pollyanna Minnesotan approach, which is true, right? I mean, we do have that vibe going on over here. It really is received better, and it's just flat out more professional. And unfortunately, I have seen brands dip into and kind of fall into that negative bite, particularly with a response plan. So when you create your strategy, you would eventually create a social media response plan. So how to respond to somebody when they say X, positive, neutral, or negative, making sure you're capitalizing on. That's the biggest trap for people to go into kind of a negative spiral. But it happens with original content as well. So avoid negativity would be my big thing. Medium-wise, okay. I don't have, can't really think of anything that I would be largely against, but I will say variety is good as well.
Okay. We have a comment and a question. My organization is starting to grow its social media presence. We do regular posts and tag other people. However, we have found that our reach is limited to our current network and connections. What can we do to reach people outside our immediate network?
Yeah, so that is a fantastic example of a high collaboration, big picture strategic plan meeting, right? So what I usually recommend when people are kind of stuck in that rut, like churn almost, you know, like you're just stuck in the same group of people, is bring in as many different thinkers from the organization that you can. So for example, do you have somebody who works in customer service? Do you have somebody who works in accounting? And sometimes your organization is small, so you just don't have this. But the point is, bring in those different thinkers and start a conversation around partners. Who is it who's doing what in our community, why and how, and then how can we connect? And then if you're looking to do a stronger kind of jumpstart of like widening that audience, we step off of the social platforms and we start sending emails, making phone calls, reaching out to people at conferences and saying, hey, I think we have overlap in our audience. How would you feel about doing a shared event or doing this, that, or the other thing? And then what happens is people sign up for your event, they have their audience shows up, your audience shows up, but there's only a 1/3 overlap. So you now have access to get in front of all these people. And however you're making this connection, you put the feelers out there. So like if you've never worked with us before, you can capture you can get a free book download, and then you've captured their email address, right? So like with these kind of strategic moves, you bring and kind of boost your audience. So that's the blood, sweat equity kind of way. The other way is ads. So you can, on any platform, do such targeted advertising that if you are looking to grow a specific audience, you're looking to pull more people in from a specific state, you're looking to do these different things, that's when you call up your marketing consultants and support and say like, okay, we need to do some targeting advertising. And then that call to action is really specific about what do you want to do? Do you want them to follow your Facebook page? Do you want them to download something? Do you want them to come to something? But it's tailoring that ad.
Well, great. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. I don't see any other questions. I do want to remind anyone that if you have announcements, please just jot that into the chat, and I will take a few moments to let you unmute and give those announcements to our participants. In the meantime, I do want to make everyone aware we, as an organization, will continue to host events. There is all kinds of work and scheduling going on behind the scenes. Maybe we'll do a social media post about that. And we will be announcing upcoming events pretty soon. We have a March event already in the works. And that will all be posted on our website and, of course, email blast. So I don't see any announcements coming in. Thank you so much, Amy. I've attended sessions of yours at other conferences, so I knew what I was getting, and I'm still overjoyed with all the tips that I have. So thank you so much for sharing your advice, and I hope everyone got some very tactical tips that they can take away. If you have any other thoughts, we will make this recording available as well as the slides. Anything else, please contact us here at CNG. Otherwise, have a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.